Measures of English Academic Proficiency by Brian Berzal. When discussing the construct English Academic Proficiency, one must first look at what language proficiency actually relates to. Language proficiency is the ability of an individual to speak or perform in an acquired language. However, when looking at language proficiency from an academic standpoint, it can be classified as having a high level of competence or skill in regards to four major components, those being speaking, writing, reading, and listening. For the duration of this project, I'll be exploring the reading component of this construct through the analysis of two unique measures. The measures I'll be comparing include the test of English as a foreign language, also referred to as the TOEFL, in relation to the International English Language Testing System, commonly referred to by its acronym, IELTS. The TOEFL originated in the United States of America as it was developed by Stanford University and was first administered in 1964. Because of its origin, the test does ask its questions in US English and has recently shifted to something called the IBT, or the Internet-Based Test. The results for this test are used for post-secondary admission for colleges and universities that utilize English instruction. Now referencing the IELTS, we notice it was first developed by Cambridge University in the United Kingdom. It was first administered in 1989, and because of its origin, asks its questions in UK English. The test is done in person, and there are two different forms for this test, the general training form as well as the academic form. The results for this test are used for two purposes, the first of which is post-secondary admission to colleges and universities that utilize English instruction. The second purpose is for immigration reasons to some countries. When selecting these measures, I researched the two most commonly used ESL tests for acceptance by universities and colleges in the United States and Canada. The TOEFL is recognized by over 9,000 educational institutions in over 130 countries. The IELTS is currently leading the ESL testing field with over 2 million candidates taking the test last year alone. Although both tests evaluate their test takers' abilities in various aspects of the English language, they clearly differ in their roots and origins. However, one would also notice that their breakdown or definition of the construct English Academic Proficiency also presents itself with variances. When looking at the TOEFL IBT, they define English Academic Proficiency as the ability to utilize and comprehend English in regards to listening, reading, writing, and speaking when carrying out academic undertakings. The test is done for individuals 15 years or older. If you are under 15, the completion of the junior TOEFL is optional. Contrasting this definition is that of the IELTS, which defines English Academic Proficiency as whether the candidate is deemed ready to start studying or training in English at either an undergraduate or postgraduate standard. This test is carried out for individuals 16 years or older. Both the TOEFL IBT and the IELTS academic measures are established for similar purposes, however their intended uses do vary. The TOEFL IBT was established for screening, assessment, evaluation, and critical thinking, and its intended uses are reading to find information, reading for basic comprehension, reading to learn, reading to integrate information across multiple texts. The IELTS shares the same purpose of that of the TOEFL IBT, however does vary in its intended uses. Its intended uses include expeditious reading, which is quick, selective reading in order to find relevant facts, as well as careful reading, which is extracting important information or main points from a source. Let's take a look at the format, structure, and layout of the two measures. The TOEFL IBT includes 4 subtests. The subtests include reading, listening, speaking, and writing. There are a number of alternate forms of the TOEFL IBT, including the Junior TOEFL, which is ages 11 to 14 years old, as well as the TOEFL PBT, or paper-based test, with its most current version being the 2014. The IELTS Academic also has 4 subtests. The subtests are listed as listening, academic reading, academic writing, and speaking. You'll notice the asterisks next to academic reading and academic writing because the academic version does differ from the general training version. And you'll see at the bottom here, the alternate form is the general training version, which is used for immigration purposes. The next comparison we will explore include both measures of administration times, administration methods, and accommodations. The TOEFL IBT begins with the reading section, which ranges from 60 to 80 minutes long, followed by the listening, speaking, and writing sections for a total time of a minimum of 3 hours and 10 minutes to a maximum of 4 hours. This test is done online with the use of a computer, and the accommodations made are for test takers with disabilities, which include assistance, extended time, extra breaks, a note taker, reader, and scribe. When it comes to the IELTS academic test, it begins with the listening section, followed by the academic reading, which is approximately 60 minutes, and concludes with the academic writing and speaking sections. The total time is approximately 2 hours and 45 minutes and is administered through paper and pencil. Accommodations are also made for test takers with disabilities, which include extra time, frequent breaks, audio amplification, a word processor, a scribe or reader, or a separate room, including a Braille version of the test. The 2 measures are also unique in their number of included items and the item selection in their forms of assessment. The TOEFL IBT's reading section has approximately 3 to 4 subsections with 1 reading passage per section. It ranges between 36 to 56 questions total, with the description of items including diagram label completion, matching information, identifying readers' views, matching features, matching headings, multiple choice questions, and table completion. The IELTS academic reading section has 3 subsections with 1 reading passage per section. This has 40 questions total, and the description of items include multiple choice, sentence insertion, reading to learn questions, and chart completion. The scoring system used by the 2 measures are completely unique to each test and share very few similarities. The TOEFL IBT takes the addition of all sections' raw scores. Each of the 4 sections is marked out of 30 points, 1 being a low score to 30 being the high score. They then add all raw scores together for a total out of 120. An example is 25 plus 20 plus 30 plus 15 equals a total of 90 out of a possible 120 points. Meanwhile, the IELTS academic measure utilizes a 9-band scoring system. Each of the 4 sections would receive a band score, or a total out of 9. 1 would be the equivalent of a non-user of English, and 9 would be considered an expert user. You add all band scores and then divide it by the total sections being 4 to receive an overall band score. For example, you would take the 5 from one section, the 6 from another, 7.5 from another section, and a 5.5 from the last section. You would add them all together and we'd get 24 total bands. You then divide it by the 4 sections and we get a total of 6, which would serve as our overall band score. Let's explore the TOEFL scoring in detail. Taking a microscope to the reading section results, the scores range from 0 being the lowest possible score to 30 being the highest. We can see that the breakdown of the test taker's ability is listed on the right-hand side of the chart. In order to be considered as having a high reading proficiency, the test taker would need to score a 22 to 30. An intermediate level would constitute a score of 15 to 21, and a low-level score would be considered anywhere from 0 to 14. As one can visibly notice, the IELTS uses its own unique scoring system. There is no pass or fail in IELTS, rather all test results are reported on a clear 9-band scale, from 1 the lowest, 9 to the highest. The scale has remained consistent and acquired currency around the world over the past 3 decades. Candidates receive an overall band score as well as an individual score for each test component, those being listening, reading, writing, and speaking. Although the two measures use different scoring systems, it can be noted that conversion charts between the two results are widely available. Looking at some of the figures, we can see that a 30 on the TOEFL IBT is equivalent to a 9 on the IELTS academic test. Midway down the chart, we notice a 19 to 23 range on the TOEFL is comparable to a 6.5 on the IELTS. And on the lower end of the figure, a 0 to 2 on the TOEFL is considered less than 4 on the IELTS academic test. In regards to scoring and skills, we can notice that a number of scoring systems are available for both measures. Also, one would notice that both normative referenced and criterion reference measures are utilized. The term normative reference measures refers to the process of comparing one test taker to his or her peers. The term criterion reference measures is translating test scores into a statement about the behavior to be expected of a person with that score or their relationship to a specified subject matter. In regards to the TOEFL IBT, the available scales included raw scores, ordinal scale, percentile ranks, predicted achievement, standard scores, and composite scores. The results were gathered based on 50,393 test takers from April, July, August, and December 2007 IBT tests. In regards to the criterion referenced, the results were compared to a set of content/performance standards measuring English skills, knowledge, and performance designed by the TOEFL creators. The IELTS academic utilizes the following scales: raw scores, which is the points total for individual questions; ordinal scale, percentile ranks, predicted achievement, standard scores, composite scores, and stay9 scores. The norming sample for the IELTS academic was not made available, which leads to questions about validity and reliability, which we'll cover in a few minutes' time. In regards to the actual criterion descriptions or criterion reference measure, it does take English-related items and evaluates them with various questions ranging in difficulty and skill determined by the test developers of the IELTS. When comparing the two measures in relation to their reliability, several types of reliability were considered, including internal consistency, test-retest reliability, alternate form reliability, and inter-rater reliability. When it comes to the TOEFL, the raw score internal consistency coefficients ranged from 0.79 to 0.98, with a mean of 0.94 over 88 total coefficients. The raw score for the test-retest coefficients ranged from 0.87 to 0.98, with a mean of 0.93 over 22 total coefficients. And the raw score for the alternate form coefficients ranged from 0.78 to 0.97, with a mean of 0.90 over 22 total coefficients. However, the inter-rater reliability was not readily available for this test. In comparison, the IELTS academic reports an internal consistency mean of 0.86, which, although is lower than the TOEFL mean score for this form of reliability, still is considered quite good for a high-stakes measure. Even after contacting the IELTS, information was not shared regarding the test-retest reliability nor the alternate form reliability. The inter-rater correlation was approximately 0.77 for the revised scale and GE coefficients of 0.84 to 0.93 for the operational single-rater condition. Also, the IELTS is usually only scored by one evaluator, which does not always give the most true score. Multiple raters should rate the IELTS test independently, and inter- and intra-rater reliability estimates should be constantly calculated to decide about the reliability and consistency of the scores. The statistics for validity appear to be a lot more sparse for both the TOEFL IBT and the IELTS academic tests. In regards to the content validity, which refers to the extent to which a measure represents all facets of a given social construct, both measures utilize test writers from different English-speaking countries who develop TOEFL and IELTS content as part of an expert panel that reflect real-life situations relating to various countries. The TOEFL does report a concurrent validity coefficient. Concurrent validity is a type of evidence that can be gathered to defend the use of a test for predicting other outcomes. The TOEFL reports a concurrent validity score of 0.68, which is considered somewhat low for a high-stakes test. It does not report any statistics or coefficients on construct validity, yet the measure, like the IELTS, does test the four aspects of English, thus suggesting that it is possible to demonstrate construct validity for the TOEFL to some extent. The TOEFL is considered to have a high face validity based on its reputation as a leading ESL test globally. This left me somewhat puzzled how a commonly used measure such as this does not report more of its validity findings. The IELTS also reported a concurrent validity coefficient, but this report them had listed well above the TOEFL, claiming a 0.89 coefficient, a number that is considered as more than respectable. Although the manual and website failed to report on the predictive validity, an independent study by Davies and Kreiper concluded that the contribution of language proficiency to academic outcome is about 10%, a correlation of 0.3. This suggests that language does contribute to academic success but does not play a major role come post-secondary studies. Like the TOEFL, the IELTS has built up a strong reputation as an ESL frontrunner and therefore has high face validity. With any measure, there are both pros and cons related to the overall test. Taking a look at the TOEFL IBT, one would notice that the pros include it being relatively affordable at $150 to $250, the fact that it's tested in US English and accepted by all US universities. The questions are multiple choice, meaning if you don't know the answer, you could guess and possibly still get it right. Also, if an individual is good on the computer, they may scroll to the essay, back to the questions, easy to access. The test is done online for convenience. However, the cons include that it is longer at 4 hours, questions use mixed skills, and the fact that the content is presented in academic English. Not discrediting the IELTS academic test, it also has its own set of pros and cons. The positives behind this measure include its price being equivalent to that of the TOEFL IBT, costing between $150 and $250. Also, it's shorter than the TOEFL at 2 hours and 45 minutes. It's more conversational rather than academic, and preparation is considered more predictable. The cons include you have to physically write out your answers by hand, not by the use of computer. It tests in UK English, and British accents and expressions do come into play. Reading section is lengthy. You must be familiar with synonyms, and some US colleges do not accept this test. You also must make the appointment and write it in person, and based on our findings, it lacks statistics available to the public. Expressing my personal opinion on the two measures, I somewhat prefer the TOEFL IBT because of the following reasons. It's easier to relate to US English based on my geographical location. It employs academic writing style. The questions are multiple choice, meaning chance is a last option. It's carried out online, both sign-up, attendance, and editing, and it's more widely accepted by North American universities. However, this does not discredit the fact that reliability and validity statistics are missing for this measure. Thank you for listening to my measure comparison. My references: